Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending our seminar today. The topic is financial and life planning, which quite frankly is a massive topic, and we are going to hit a lot of things, leaving off much more that we could talk about. So as questions come up, as Ted mentioned, go ahead and raise your hand, and this can be as interactive as you would like. It is a small group, so not a problem with that. So this is about planning your finances and organizing your affairs for peace of mind, presented by Lynn over here, Lynn Potts, and myself, Stacy Flanagan. All right, normally Lynn would introduce herself, but I'm hogging the microphone. I feel very powerful, so I'm going to introduce her. Lynn is the managing partner with On Track Advisors. She is a board member of the Gateway End of Life Coalition, which is pretty big here in St. Louis. Is it national or just St. Louis? Just St. Louis. Member of the Aging Life Care Association and Association of Daily Money Managers, with over 15 years of experience in the senior care profession. So I do like to call these slides why the heck we are qualified to speak on this topic, because quite frankly, anybody could get up here and pretend to know what they're talking about, but I assure you, Lynn and I truly do. I'm Stacy Flanagan. I own my own financial planning practice at Visionary Wealth Advisors. I am a CFP, or Certified Financial Planner. It's kind of like the CPA. It's the big dog designation in the financial planning world. I am also a CSA, Certified Senior Advisor. Ted over here is also a CSA, but Ted and I don't have the same profession. That's what makes CSA so incredible, is that it's any profession that specializes in working with seniors. So it could be real estate agents, mortgage individuals, myself, financial planners, you name it. If we work with seniors, we have access to resources, but then also referral partners. So I can work hand in hand with Ted, and we can make sure our senior clients are getting the best service possible. I'm the president of the Missouri Alliance for Animal Legislation, not senior related, but I do like to put that out there. If you are an animal lover, I am your girl. We are the only lobbyist group in Jeff City advocating for the shutdown of puppy mills, as you may or may not know. Missouri is terrible for that, as well as advocating for animal welfare laws. So if you like animals, show me your pets after we leave. I love seeing pictures. And I am incredibly passionate and compassionate because of my why. So this is my first and only career. It's second career for many folks, actually. In my office, I can see that a lot. So something you should know about me is that I knew I wanted to do this when I was really young. I lost my father when I was 15. And even though we saw his death barreling towards us a million miles away, we knew it was imminent, there was never any sort of planning. There was never any sort of organizing. There was never any sort of handoff of, hey, this is what you need to do. This is where you need to go. This is our financial plan. I often say it was a negative financial plan. They just did nothing or did things to deter it. Financial planning is one of those things that seems more complicated than it really is. And when something feels complicated, it's human nature to put it off. Maybe tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, maybe tomorrow. Well, even though my father knew he was going to pass away and my family knew he was going to pass away, they kept saying tomorrow. But tomorrow eventually came and went and left us in a position where I realized, you know what, there were little things, I'm not talking rocket science, little things that could have made my life easier, my family's life easier after his demise. So I get into this profession and I truly want to understand it, not only for myself and my family, but also for my clients. And then when I give talks like such, I really focus on, hey, let's break it down, let's not make it so complicated. But also I focus on, these are common mistakes that you just hear everywhere of what you should do. So we'll talk about that.
Can I break in and give Stacy a testimonial?
Yes.
She has a client, has some challenges, called me and said, you might be able to help these individuals. I have witnessed and have seen how Stacy doesn't just do the financial part of helping and taking care of clients. Your reach goes beyond that.
Thank you, Lynn.
No, I mean, seriously, I've seen it firsthand, and I'm like, wow, I don't know other financial planners that actually. I know the financial planner my husband and I have had for years, they don't do what Stacy will do for her clients. It's just a testimonial, and Stacy and I have not known each other that long, so it's not like we're besties and go out and have drinks.
I paid her to say that, so, you know, money talks.
No, we don't go out for drinks, so it's a true testimonial.
No bribery. Speaking of bribery, so this is not the most riveting topic. It can be a little uncomfortable, a little overwhelming, and so we like to sprinkle in trivia. So I hope you find this adds a little liveliness back to this and some fun. So we've got trivia questions. First to raise your hand, we'll answer, and then we've got some candy to give away. Who was the first president to appear on television? No. Yes. All right, the psychology of money. So the CFP board, one of my designations, added this in 2022. So if they thought it was important, I truly believe that it is very, very valuable. And it's essentially logic versus emotion, and we often approach our finances with both. We lean one or the other. It's important to know how you lean so that you can then balance it out. So I'll give you a couple examples before we dive into it. So would you rather $2,000 a week forever, $1 million one time, or a $5 million interest-free loan for 5 years? You can think about that answer in your head. I won't make you shout it out. I will say that there is one glaringly, logically correct answer on this, but it's driven kind of about life stage and needs. So $2,000 a week forever is about $104,000 a year. Don't get me wrong, that's a nice chunk of change to have every year guaranteed, but it is not the right answer on this. Neither is the $1 million one time. So the problem with the $1 million one time is that, well, if you invested it, it would be better than the $2,000 a week forever. But it's the lottery equation. What happens to most lottery winners? They go bankrupt. Why do they go bankrupt? Because we hand them $1 million and they pay off their debt, understandably, I get it. They probably buy themselves a house or pay off their home, maybe buy their mom and dad a home or their kids a home, right? And so suddenly that $1 million is, I don't know, 500, 400, taxes aside, and that's what they instead invest. And so that's the lottery equation, is that if you really took it all and invested it, great, but it just generally doesn't happen. Now, this is the answer that is the logically correct answer, but not always the emotionally one that people choose. A $5 million loan interest-free for 5 years. Why does that make the most sense? Well, if you invested that money, someone gives you $5 million, and you invested it conservatively earning 5%, it's significantly more than $104,000. Now, if you take even a little bit more risk, which is sometimes needed in financial planning, because we call that risk tolerance or risk appetite, you can invest that in a business, generating significantly more than both of those equations. But that's not always what feels comfortable. Does that make sense to everybody? It's the not comfortable, but makes the most on paper sense. But that's okay. Life isn't just about being comfortable. What's easier to spend? So you're at QT on the corner, and you find something that you don't normally buy. It's $20, and you've got $20 that was sitting in your wallet. It's been sitting there a pretty long time, so you see it every time you open your wallet. Or the $20 you found that morning from your coat pocket because your coat has been stored all winter. Well, that $20 in your coat pocket feels like a new $20 bill that you never had. That one's easier to spend than the one that's been in your pocket for a really long time. Now, spending the $20, you're $20 poor regardless. But why did the $20 from the coat feel easier to spend? Because it was new. You hadn't been looking at it. It didn't feel like yours. But it was. You're still $20 poor. That's the psychology of money. Psychology of money explores how emotions, cognitive biases, and personal experiences shape your financial decisions more often than logic or income levels. Why does it matter? Because it influences your spending and saving. So just to understand how you grew up, I grew up conservatively financially because we had to, right? And so as my career builds and I make more money, it can be hard for me to spend money. That is a bias I bring into my financial plan. Not always the worst thing in the world to be conservative, but it's certainly, I want to be able to enjoy the fruits of my labor. It makes talking about money difficult, right? So why did my dad not talk to my mom about finances? Why didn't they have a financial advisor? Why didn't, my older siblings know where anything was in terms of like estate plans when that all happened? It's because this is all driven by emotion. I mentioned this already, try to approach each decision with logic and emotion to maximize the benefit because they're both very irrelevant. And then most financial planning mistakes can be blamed usually on an inaction or a blunder of, some rule of thumb that we might be using. So I talk more about those rule of thumbs. I find the psychology of money incredibly fascinating. Hopefully you do too. Trivia time. Who starred as Dorothy in the original Wizard of Oz?
Oh, we got two for two.
We got two.
Here.
It's a small group. Yeah, you can win. You're good. Don't apologize. Judy Garland. Now, if these are not correct, this is Google, okay? So just know that. Okay, good. All right, what does retirement look like? So It is fascinating to me, and I don't think this will ever truly change, but most of my clients will come to me if they're not in retirement already. They are planning and looking towards retirement as if that life stage will bring fulfillment. So I truly do push my clients to expand their thought process when it comes to what does retirement look like. I think there is this common notion that retirement, and I think some of you folks in here are retired, so you probably understand this, that no work equals like this vacation feeling, or it might have been anticipated that it was going to be a vacation. Well, that vacation feeling is short-lived. It probably exists in the beginning when you're like, wow, I don't have to get up, I have time for my coffee, I am not in a rush. That feeling exists, but it will not exist forever. And you'll have time on your hands where you'll need fulfillment. So there is this rule of thumb that says you need 80% of your income, of your pre-retirement income, to utilize in retirement. I think that is a big fat lie. Retirement, I call every day is Saturday. What day of the week do you spend the most money? Saturday. Saturday is the day that you have time, most folks have time on their hands. You are going shopping, you might be picking up a gift, you might be traveling. It's the day that you spend money, and every day in retirement is a Saturday. And so you often, in my opinion, need to plan for an income that is higher than your pre-retirement income. Not for all, but believe me, when you get bored, you spend money. When you're busy, you spend less money. Well, you're not going to be as busy. So that is a rule of thumb that I think is complete bogus. And it matters for cash flow planning if you're, doing it yourself or working with a professional, but it also matters for your mental health awareness. I have a Boeing engineer client who worked with me to retire, and he wanted to retire. It was the only thing he talked about. We got him there. He was happy for 2 months, 3 months. Now he works at Lowe's because he's bored and he needs fulfillment. And he works out here somewhere, I think St. Peter's. And so he's a gentleman that you might run into and wonder why the heck he works at Lowe's, because this man knows way too much about your project. It's because he was a Boeing engineer in his career. He worked towards retirement, and that was a heavily mentally exhausting job that went from tying up all his mental resources to nothing. He was bored. So you got to plan for that and understand that, because it really impacts your mental health, having that something to get up for every day. All right, cash flow planning. The greatest risk of investing is liquidating in an inopportune time. What do I mean by that? Every client that I meet with, I say, what cash needs do you have in the next 5 years? Most will say, no, nothing big, maybe a trip, or maybe $10,000 at the end of the year for taxes I'll need help on to pull from my account. But other than that, Stacy, this is for long term. It's almost always not the case. During COVID, everybody's working from home and they're stuck in home. And what are they doing? They're at their kitchen counter, working, or doing what have you, socializing. And they're looking at their outdated kitchen. Do you want to know how many clients of mine called me during COVID and wanted to do a kitchen renovation that we had not planned for, right? And do you guys remember what happened to the stock market during COVID? 30, 40% down? I said, absolutely not. You either need to plan ahead with your cash reserves or be flexible. And in those cases, I coach my clients to be flexible. Market rebounded, they got their kitchen renovation. But we're not going to pull out just because we didn't plan for this. We need to be flexible. They all got their kitchens, don't get me wrong, they're all beautiful, but we needed that flexibility. Now, if you're going to have those cash reserves on the side, this is just like a little tip on the side, not all banks pay the same. So shop it out. Just because you are working with, U.S. Bank, Commerce Bank, doesn't mean they give the best rate on cash, okay? Look at other banks, credit unions. The bigger the bank does not always mean the better the rate. I actually find that to be opposite. But I do believe in having cash reserves. Just be smart about where it's being stored and make sure you're earning a good rate on that. All right, myth or fact. I am retired or near retirement, so I need to be conservative in my investment approach and allocation. So most of the time we think the older we are, the more conservative we need to be. Not always the case. We're going to talk about risk appetite versus risk tolerance. I'm going to use a pizza example. Your pizza appetite, 2 slices. You could probably eat 3 or 4. Appetite versus your tolerance, okay? So if we have a widower, let's say 50 years old, her husband passes away, she has a bucket of money she is actively living on. Many different tolerances or appetites could come into play here, but she might either, 1, need to be really conservative because she's living on that money, or I might look at her and say, in order for this to last, it has to be more aggressive, okay? Well, she's gonna have an appetite of what will allow her to sleep at night, but I might have to push her to a tolerance to achieve her goals. Now, the opposite could happen with, let's say, a 80 or 90-year-old retired has a pension. They're living on the pension, not dipping from their investments. When you're not dipping from your investments, you're not really needing that cash and could be more aggressive. Well, this man or woman might want to be more conservative because, well, it helps them sleep at night again. But if they're earmarking this money for a legacy, a charity, children, what have you, they have the tolerance to be more aggressive because they're not utilizing that cash. They're not going to be calling me to live on that money. They're living on their retirement. So it's not always black and white. The older you are, the more conservative you are. There's definitely a balance to be had, but also some planning to be done. All right, diversification. This is interesting. We all hear the saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. If I get a prospective client or somebody I give a second opinion to, they bring me a statement and they have one provider on it. So let's say whoever the custodian is, you can name any of them, and all of their funds, they're in mutual funds, say American funds. I have nothing against American funds, but I don't believe that any one fund company is the best investment for every single sector. So that is a diversification where it could really help by finding the best provider of these. Stock concentration. Client called me. I don't know what was going on with QQQ, but if you're not familiar of it, it's a ETF on technology. And I think it had been in the news or something. Several clients had called me on it. Hey, I want to buy QQQ. I was like, okay, let's pull up exactly what's in QQQ. Well, they already owned the big top 10 holdings in other investments. So again, that is something that, media drives a lot of things, right? Too many eggs in one basket. They could have just bought something that already had a concentration. It's definitely a mistake I see. When does it hinder? Okay, I see accounts at too many institutions. You got a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here. That's hard for planning. It's hard for yourself. It's hard for keeping that risk tolerance in line when you've got money everywhere. I don't think you should diversify how many places you have your money. Too many cooks in the kitchen. It comes up sometimes where you've just got too many professionals, too many financial advisors. I've seen it. Too many cooks in the kitchen, too many opinions. Financial planning is an art and a science. There's more than one way to get to your destination. If you have too many cooks in the kitchen, it's just going to get muddled. Too much cash. That's also something where it can hinder you. There's a fine line. All right, long-term care. When we talk about long-term care, we talk about how to plan for it. It's easier to plan for it when you don't need any sort of care versus when you're in the thick of needing it. But I think we have to conceptualize long-term care and also get out of our minds of what we commonly assume it is. Most folks, or as my mother would joke, put her in a home, right? It's the retirement home situation. But there's various ways to structure it, and that cost varies greatly. So it's something that you should plan for, talk about, have your family on board, because again, that's all easier to do before it's really, truly needed. And there's a huge burnout for caregiving. Eldest daughter they talk about, that is the biggest mental load, physical probably too, is the eldest daughter on a family. She's usually the one that will drive that for the parents. So if you can plan for that, you can try to make sure you're kind of sparing your children from that burnout. What dance became a fad in the 1960s? Yeah. I was like, don't make me do it. I think my dad taught me it, but I can't remember it. Identity theft. All right. Just checking time real quick. Okay. Identity theft. Oh my gosh, it's everywhere. It's so sad. You feel like you can't trust anything. Okay. And I think for some of my seniors, technology really scares them, and I completely understand that. It makes them feel more at risk for identity theft. I don't always believe that to be true. I think there's identity theft that can happen without, even if you're, separating yourself from the online world. But, check washing, I'll jump ahead. Check washing is huge. So the big institutions, Schwab, Fidelity, I work with both of them, they are really veering away from checks, like sending somebody a check. It's become, they have had so many instances of check washing. And if you're not familiar with check washing, it's leaving all the pertinent information and just washing out payable to and the amount. And these folks are writing a check for any amount of money they want. So when you send a check in the mail, that provides a real risk. So bill pay can help alleviate that. The ones I see a lot, my clients are telling me Social Security or IRS are calling them. They don't call. They send very official letters. They might call if you scheduled an appointment with Social Security, and that is to be expected, but they're not calling. The grandchild scam, I'm not sure if you've heard that, where they're saying, Grandma, Grandpa, I need help. I'm locked away, I need bail. Sounds very feasible, horrible. Just be mindful of that. Viruses inside of emails and links or attachments, that is super scary. Don't open links or attachments from sources you're not expecting. So how to avoid that? I don't think any of us are just like, there's no one way to make yourself completely foolproof to being susceptible to scam, anybody included. But just consistent monitoring, making sure you're checking everything. You know what the norm is in your financial life, so you are the best person to catch anything out of the ordinary. Scrutinize email addresses. They're getting really good about, looking official. If you don't, or if you're questioning it, just don't respond via what they're telling you to. Call that number on the back of your card. Call the number on your statement you know is legit. And then utilize, as I mentioned, potentially bill pay or auto pay over check writing. Estate planning. All right, so estate planning, if you're fortunate enough to get that gumption to go do it, it can be a very hard hurdle to do. But once you do it, there are some mistakes that can happen. You want to make sure that your documents are not kept hidden or locked away for those who will need to reference it. These might seem like very, very personalized, private documents, but they should not be private to those who are going to help you facilitate them. So what I mean by that is, don't take them and put them in a, what's the block box at the safe deposit box that only you have access to, right? They need to be somewhere that that are easily retrievable, where your children know where they are, and maybe even make sure your attorney knows where they are, or your financial advisor, and that person can help pull the pieces together. When your trust is not funded, so you spend money on this trust, probably a revocable living trust, and you have this expensive document, but you don't do what's called funding. That trust could be worthless. So that is going in and retitling your assets in the name of the trust, or making sure that they are the beneficiary of the trust. Whatever your estate planner instructs you to do. I'm not an estate planning attorney. I just know enough to be dangerous, but I help my clients make sure it's all organized and that you did these estate plans for a reason and that they are effective. Lack of periodic reviews. Fortunately, you just can't get it done and then never check it again. Laws change, family changes. Maybe your daughter and her husband were your trustees or powers of attorney, but your daughter just went through a divorce, and now you don't want Steve on there, right? Because it was a contentious divorce. Well, that's something to review, right? Because we don't want Steve in control of your finances. I have a loser brother named Steve, so that's why I use that name. So if that's your name, I apologize. All right, so my leave behind is this after loss checklist. I often get brought into situations almost identical to when my father passed and my family was like deer in headlights. I'm now brought into those situations where folks have not planned and they want to know, what the heck do we do? And so I like this checklist. I can't take credit for it. It's for PALS. It's an organization that helps with after loss. And what I really like about it is it tells you, what do I need to do right now, right? Like the very, very right now. What can wait? Because we're in the middle of grief, right? And what do we need to hire an expert for? And so it really breaks it down, because in those moments, it's not easy to think clearly, because obviously you're going through grief. And it's somebody who's in the thick of grief who's the one usually that's responsible for organizing the affairs. So I like this checklist because it gives you kind of the priority. Last trivia question of mine. Which fast food chain opened its first restaurant in 1954 with a focus on hamburgers? Raise of hand. McDonald's.
Right.
All right, I've got a couple more slides. Vetting your professionals, okay? Research, Very important. Just Google people. You can find out a lot about them, probably more than you wanted to know, but I think more information is better than less. Credentials help, but some matters more than others. Like some are just kind of bogus. You can do research on that. I often CaseNet people. I CaseNet my new neighbors. I am the neighborhood creep. CaseNet people, you'll find out, again, more than you want to know. Sometimes it's just traffic tickets. Sometimes it's a messy divorce. Sometimes it's violence. Sometimes it's theft. Doesn't necessarily pertain to their profession, but I sure as heck don't want a violent person doing my estate plan, even though that's not actually relevant to his degree, right? And so just check CaseNet. You can find out a lot about people. Brokercheck.org, that is like a background check for financial advisors. Highly recommend you check that. That will show credentials, where somebody has worked, if they're licensed. If they're not on BrokerCheck, that's a huge red flag. I've run into that before. Experience and age matter, but not how you might not initially assume. I do take on a lot of clients right now that the advisor is retiring and then that book is being passed on. So you kind of need that balance of somebody who's not going to retire when you retire or in your retirement. They need to be able to see you through, but also have the experience to know what the heck they're doing and have seen different cases. And then what's hard to measure is just work with somebody who cares, not who somebody's going through the motions. I think you probably are all decent judges of character. I just encourage you to work with folks in any aspect of your life, taxes, estate planning, financial, what have you. Work with people that you can tell care, because it will make a difference. We don't always have to do the full gamma for every client, but if we care, we will. Now, why does all of this matter? I like to talk about legacy. Legacy is not always about the money you leave behind. It's about how your family and your friends feel about you when you leave behind, and if they're able to grieve in peace or in chaos. And so if you want your legacy to be a peaceful one, which I think we can all agree on that, it is important to take action and make sure that regardless of how much or how little you have, it is all organized, accounted for, and everything can go smoothly. Something I wish my father would have done. All right, I'm going to hand this over to Lynn, and she is going to dive deeper on some topics I have touched on and give her perspective as well.
All right. It's mic hooked up, right?
Yeah, it's already.
There we go.
And then you just click that.
Okay. Stacy covers, just to let you know, I'm not a financial planner. Stacy is. However, we work with clients in a lot of capacities with their day-to-day financial matters. But that's not what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk, you don't have to take notes because you will get a handout. You will get a checklist to take home with you. But this is more of a community service in a presentation I came up with because of an experience I had with my uncle. Not married, no children. Closest living relative was my mom, his sister, his only sister, only sibling. That's it. That's all he had. My mom and I live in St. Louis. He lives in Maui. We got a phone call from a social worker saying, my mom did, that your brother's in bad shape. Somebody, the state's going to have to take over, or somebody's going to have to come take care of him. And I had lived with him for a while when I got out of college, so I knew him pretty well. Of anybody, I knew him very well. Fast forward, I said to my mom, we're going to have to do, I'll step in, I'll see what I can do. Fortunately, 3 years before that phone call, he had a trust. Because 3 years before that phone call, my family and I took my kids there, my husband and I, because I thought it might be the last time my mom and her brother ever see each other. And I kind of wanted to check in on him. And my kids were at an age that they would have enjoyed a week in Maui. And I forced him, and I coerced him into getting a trust. I said, if you don't have a trust, nobody is going to have power. The problem is, so he got the trust, saved his rear end from having to become a ward of the state, and allowed me to do what I needed to do. The problem is he didn't do the rest. And 8 years ago, I didn't know what I know now. Had I known what I know now, I wouldn't have had to step in and do a part-time job on top of my full-time job, volunteer work, and my 3 children. But I didn't want him to become a ward of the state. So who loves their family? Now here's a really interesting question. Think about it. Who do you love your loved ones? If they're your loved ones, you love them, right? please don't put them in a position, and I'm going to go through this, don't put your loved ones in a position where you can, while you're still of sound mind and body, prepare and take care of things. And what I mean by that, so again, well, do it while you're prepared. Why plan? And I've got one thing to take away today is why plan. The checklist, don't take notes. You'll get the checklist, and I'm not going to run through everything on the checklist. I already asked, do you love your family? Do you want your wishes honored when you're in the dying stage or after death with regard to your finance, legal matters, and health care? Or do you just want somebody else to make all those decisions for you? Possibly people that don't agree with your wishes. And then do you want to sleep at night? Just like going to a qualified financial advisor that can actually work with you on your financial picture, your retirement plans, your spending, your savings, your investments. You want to sleep at night, right? So I will say this is my point, and this is why I do this. Planning ahead, and I'm going to read it. I know you can all read. Planning ahead and documenting, or documenting, is essential to avoid probate. Like Stacy said, if your funds are not titled or funded to your trust, or if a beneficiary is not named, those assets will go into probate. Someone else, a judge, is going to decide where that money goes. Preserving family harmony. If anyone has multiple children, or nieces or nephews, or even friends, do you want them all to argue and fight? And eventually, I know personally know two families, the siblings now absolutely hate each other. They were a close family, they hate each other because mom did not have things documented. And they argued over it. So preserving your family harmony, assisting your loved ones. And as Stacy alluded to this, had her father or parents had things lined out and organized, it would have helped the loved ones to carry out those wishes and spend time on caring for that individual versus on the phone with financial institutions and insurance companies and finding all this information that I had to do for my uncle. Well, let me go back. And then the fourth point is honoring your end of life wishes. Do you want to be on a ventilator if you're basically considered brain dead? If you don't, you better document that, because physicians have a Hippocratic oath to keep you alive at all cost. So you need to document that. Another trivia question, what popular TV show featured a red-haired comedian and her husband, Ricky? Raise your hand. Lucy, I heard it. Yes, Lucille Ball. I love Lucy.
You're welcome.
All right, and I said lessons from Uncle Emmett. This is why I do this. This is my why behind this presentation. Look at that checklist. We are not going to go through all that. You will get a copy of this. And it's a list I put together thinking through, wow, if I would have had the information that's on this list, again, it would not have been literally a part-time job for me, almost at minimum 2 nights a week for several hours. Fortunately, he lived in Maui, and he was not a wealthy man. But fortunately, he lived in Maui, and there was a 5-hour time difference. So I could stop work, have dinner with my family, thank God my husband cooked, and then I would go back to my office and spend 2 to 3 hours on the phone with doctors and realtors and tax people and bank and insurance and financial. It just was ridiculous. First thing is trust, find who are your trusted resources, your family, friends. If you don't have any family or friends that you would trust, seek out professionals. There are people that will act as a financial power of attorney. We will do that, and I'm not advocating because we're getting to the point where we probably aren't going to take on or accept more of those roles. And our trust company, have those conversations with your loved ones. Who are those people in your circle of trust, so to speak? And then, again, go through the list. There's a lot of documents, accounts, insurance, financial accounts, insurance policies, your contacts associated with all of them. If Stacy's got a client, I would hope that her clients have her name, email, and phone number listed, and the loved ones know who she is. And then copies of documents, driver's license, marriage license, either copies or the originals, deeds, loan information if you've got any loans out, funeral plans, that's a big one. Please discuss your funeral plans with your family. Don't make them guess. And if you do have a funeral plan, where are those documents stored and who knows where they are? Not just at the funeral home. Make sure that information is well known to your loved ones and stored properly, and they know how to get to that paperwork. A pension, my uncle, I went through 4 years. The first thing I did when I became his power of attorney, my mom was power of attorney, she resigned. All we had to do was go to the bank and get a document notarized. I called the bank literally the next day. I knew where he banked, fortunately, and I think there's only one bank in Maui. But at that point there was, and I called them and had to identify myself, send the POA documents, send his letter of the fact that he was declared incapacitated to make decisions, et cetera, and got 4 years worth of his transactions. When I was sifting through there, 3 fraudulent companies were taking money out of his checking account. I was able to stop payment on that. And his pension never, I thought, well, why isn't his pension coming? So I called, he worked for the state of Hawaii. I called and they said, well, we never got his letter. Well, he had dementia. He never signed a letter saying, yeah, I'm still alive. So 13 months, I had to go back and get 13 months because he needed the money to live off of. So things like that kind of information, even your tax documents are helpful. Now, on to something more fun. Who sang Blue Suede Shoes? Elvis, there you go, I heard it first.
Who was it?
Elvis Presley, the lady in the teal jacket. And some, what you think might be some insignificant things to document, but so we serve as the power of attorney for several individuals. I need to know who's got a second key to their house. I don't need it, but I need to know. I need to know if there's an alarm to their car, their home. If they go to the hospital or die, somebody's got to have access, right? Somebody has to know where those are. Don't make your family go on a scavenger hunt to find this. Even utilities. One of the instances, I called my uncle's because I needed to shut down his utilities. He was no longer living in his condo. And no, I needed to pay. One of the utilities companies said, well, we can't give you that information. I said, okay, well, then I can't pay the bill. Well, then all of a sudden they gave me the information. And it was phone call after phone call after phone call. Could have all been avoided had I had that information. Computer, log into computers, your phone. If no one knows how to get into your phone, they're not going to be able to get into anything else, probably, or your computer. Just even if one person knows what that passcode is and where it's stored. A safety deposit box, Stacy brought that up. If you have a safety deposit box, where's the key? Who knows where the key is? Are those people that have access or permission to have access listed at the bank? After my uncle died, after he died, and I knew he didn't run out of money completely, spent $650 to the bank to bore into his safe deposit box, because knowing him, he had like millions of dollars worth of gold bars in there, which I was kind of hoping for, or junk. Turned out it was junk. But that $650 could have gone toward his beneficiaries or a charity. What a waste of money, because nobody knew where the key was. He didn't document that. So safe deposit box, loans, if you have any loans out to any of your children, get it in writing that they either do or do not need to pay back the estate after your death. Because if one kid has a loan out for 10 grand and the other kids didn't, when you die, that 10 grand really is owed to your estate and then split between the children or beneficiaries. If that's not documented, those kids are going to hate each other or resent each other unless the siblings are super nice and say, okay, yeah, well, my brother has always needed to borrow money. It's okay if he doesn't pay it back. That rarely happens when it comes to money. And then your contact information, I talked about that. I won't go into this, but legal documents, any of your legal documents, if you have them, make sure the appropriate people have them on file. And power of attorney, property or financial power of attorneys. If you need to have your power of attorney have access to your bank or your financial institutions, the document it's easier if it's already on file at the bank. Current one. HIPAA, everybody knows what HIPAA is, right? HIPAA document, you go to the doctor. I recommend you put multiple people on that list, not just your spouse or a child. All it is just so those individuals can come in and get information from the doctors about your health. So those people you want to be able to have access or the information from the doctors and help make those decisions. HIPAA, my big thing, my big talk, and I've got copies of it, is if you do not have your advance directive done and you don't want to be, I heard if you had to be on a ventilator, that type of thing, get that healthcare power of attorney done. You don't need a lawyer for it unless you have questions, things like that, or need legal advice, but it does need to be notarized. So a couple copies of that, and they're free. Last is, if you've got a special ring from grandma, who's going to get it when you die? Put that in writing, those types of things in writing. So I'll repeat, talk to trusted friends, family, make sure you've got these things documented in writing, stored, and they know where they are. But really more importantly, what are your wishes? What do you want financially, healthcare, legal, toward your end of life or at end of life? So, year the Beatles disbanded. What year?
69.
Oh, you're close.
70.
There you go.
You can't win, Ted, sorry.
Dang.
Oh, I thought the gentleman at the cap said that. I didn't know that was Ted. Oh, Ted.
I'll give him candy, not you.
Give Ted.
I want a Butterfinger.
All right.
I have one.
I saw one.
Well, thank you. Does anyone have questions for either one of us or comments of stories or situations they've run into where, boy, it would have been helpful if they had a financial plan put together or their documents put together?
I have a comment. Can you hand each person the mic, please?
And I'm going to hand out this list.
My husband passed away last year.
Sorry to hear
And couple of the things that I was most surprised. First off, when he had early onset Alzheimer's, and before I realized that, when he could no longer help me with anything, I had none of his passwords on his computer. So that was a big thing, because of course he took care of all the bills and everything. So I really had to struggle to get all the passwords so I could take care of that stuff. The other big thing that surprised me was he moved up in this area before we got married, so all the utilities was in his name. And that was quite a hassle to get my utilities straightened out because everything was in his name. So I would advise you to make sure you have both of your names on your utilities.
Thank you for sharing. Great points. Real life example. Anyone else?
I do want to challenge everyone on this list. Give yourself some deadlines. Say, all right, I want to have these things done by July 4th. I want to have these other things done by Labor Day. I want to have these things done by Thanksgiving. Why?
Procrastinating.
Procrastination, and you're with your family at Thanksgiving time, at Christmas time, and you think, oh God, this is such a horrible topic to talk about during the holidays. No, it's really not. You're giving your family a gift. You literally are giving your family a gift by doing this.
Do you have any resources? There are national resources for, I'll say, less expensive trust or estate planning. I know some financial advisors have that as an option. Is that something that you can share with us?
Yeah. I've got a handful of contacts and resources. Yeah, we just need to explore it. So if that's needed, let me know.
Got it. Anybody in the room have a trust? Okay, more than I expected. Anybody now at this point think that a trust is something that you might want to look into?
Yes.
Something to look into just to avoid probate. Probate can get very, very expensive and is very, very public. So unless things are titled properly, probate is the fallback solution that the state gives us.
And wills still go through probate. They dictate what probate's probably going to honor, but they're still going to go through probate.
Yeah, so I
Just know
think,
that.
yeah, so I think no matter how much or little assets we have, things need to be titled properly or a
Yes.
trust might be appropriate. So I'd say consult a estate planning attorney.
Yes, and we have a lot of contacts for that.
Okay, yeah, we've
And
got
just know,
plenty.
beneficiaries, you could update your estate plans, your will, your trust, but if you have a beneficiary on a life insurance policy, that beneficiary is going to be honored. So I have seen it where it's an ex-spouse. It doesn't matter if your estate plans were updated, that beneficiary is going to be honored. So all of those things they coordinate and need to tie in and be evaluated, because the last thing you want is your life insurance going to an ex-spouse or giving them motive to end up on Dateline, right? Because they're on a life insurance policy. So,
I'll give you an example I have with a client of mine. It's actually the sister, I work with the sister because her sister really doesn't have the capacity to make decisions and handle her financial affairs. And first thing I ask when I meet with people, do you have a trust? And you don't have to. Not everybody has to have a trust. But I advocate you absolutely should have a healthcare advance directive in the minimum. Have a healthcare power of attorney. The power of attorney is actually a document, but name who your attorney in fact is going to be for healthcare and for financial. And so we were going through this. She says, oh, I have a power of attorney. I'm my sister's power of attorney. My brother and I are powers of attorney. I said, okay. Are you and your brother in agreement? Yes. Okay. She said, but I presented this to the bank and also to AT&T because there's a huge issue. We're actually filing a fraud claim against AT&T and her credit union because she's getting money the sister is getting money taken out of her checking account every month. She doesn't have an AT&T account. But our hands are tied because AT&T is not going to talk to us. The bank's not going to talk to us. So you're the power of attorney. So the money continues to get withdrawn. Finally, we got the sister and the client that hired me, the three of us on a call together to tell the credit union, stop payment before we can get this resolved. But in the meantime, this money's just coming out. The sister shows me the power of attorney. She goes, they won't take it. And I read on the second page. I could immediately tell it was a Google document. Her brother downloaded from Google. And it was somebody else's name on there. Even though it was notarized. She goes, well, the notary notarized it. And I said, well, notaries don't read the documents. They just witness the signature. So needless to say, I said, I've got an attorney based on your situation, what's going on with I've got an attorney that would be great. So they got a real, not a Google Doc, power of attorney done. That allowed us to move forward to get things done for the sister and to be able to talk to all the people we need to talk to help the sister. So it just makes things quicker if it's done right.
Do we have a question over here?
No,
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and my estate, I've been trying to get my wife to agree to updating our estate planning paperwork. I looked at it the other day. It's relatively recent, 1999. I had one child, now I have three, right? Half the people, my beneficiaries some of them are no longer here. So, and I live this every day, and I'm having a hard time getting my wife to agree to do it. We're doing it in the next 2 months, whether she likes it or not, because it needs to be done, and there's that plan of like, well, if you go, I'll still be here, and I'm like, well, what if we're in the same vehicle, for instance? We are together a lot, and as we're getting closer to retirement, we'll probably be together a lot more often, right? So just little things like that. It's a difficult a process to go through, but I think when you're done, there's a level of relief that I think everybody should have the pleasure of experiencing.
Absolutely.
Also, if any of you have children or relatives and your friends over the age of 18, they better have a advance directive done. Because my kids at 18 years old said, well, we're not old. Have you ever heard of a car accident? I don't know your wishes. I don't know what you want. And you go off to college, if I'm not on your HIPAA form and you're in an emergency room, they're not going to talk to me. You're over 18.
Right.
My daughter's now 26 and lives in Dallas. And she was home for this last summer or the holidays, and I said, we need to get your power of attorney document done. Why? Who's going to pay your rent if you're in the hospital for 4 weeks? They could kick you, they could kick you out. What's going to happen? I can't access that information. Your dad and I can't help with any of that. So my husband and I sat her down. We went through. Now, I was able to create a power of attorney document because of what I know. And also, I knew it was state of Texas appropriate. But had I not known that, or she had, if she was married and had a house and children, no way. It would have been going to an attorney, getting that done, do a full trust, everything else. But for her sake, but we have that. So something happens to her, we go to Dallas, we take care of what we need to, and hopefully there's no major hiccups, because we'd rather focus on her care, not all the other financial and legal BS, right? So.
Yeah, for my kid's 18th birthday, literally on their birthday, they each signed.
Yeah.
Healthcare and financial power of attorneys.
Yeah, same here.
They thought I was crazy.
Yeah.
But we felt as though we needed to do it. So maybe as an 18th birthday present to a grandchild or something like
We
that.
can also get them something else.
Just besides just the document. Yeah.
Right. All right.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay,
We'll stick around if anything comes up. that's
great.
more personal.
Thank you.